Hi. So in this brief video, I just want to share an overview of some of the things that we covered in a previous week where we first played around with Jamovi. And I want to go through very quickly and very intuitively some of the ways, the basic ways that we tinker with Jamovi and get a grasp of how to work with variables and how to work with descriptive statistics. So this is a picture you will see of basically Jamovi, where we have already uploaded the test data set that is available in Blackboard. So you'll notice that after we've uploaded our data set, here are all of our variables. These are variables by columns, and every row is an individual. Now you'll notice that there are little icons beside whatever our variables are. These icons tell us the variable type that they are. So if we want to look at that, we just have to double click this little tab and it'll show us everything that we want to know about how that variable is constructed. The levels here indicate the possible values that are captured in this variable. So province, for instance, is our variable, and the possible values that people filled out are these provincial names and so on. This measure type is basically our variable type. So if you see this little three circles, that refers to a categorical variable or a multinomial variable. If you want to change that, you can click this and you can just simply change the variable type by clicking whatever it is that you want. Ordinal means ordinal, this little staircase, and this little ruler means continuous. And this little tag simply refers to ID. Now, ID is not a variable type. That is basically just a way of tracking your people, assigning one different ID to every person within your data set or every unit within your data set. Now, you'll also notice the data type. Now, that is usually decided by whatever variable type that you want to classify it as. So in this case, you have integers, you have decimals, and you have text. Now, text is something that is a little bit slippery because in other software, text is usually considered a string. And most software don't like reading text. If it reads text, it doesn't really think of it as a variable. Jamovi is nice because it is a software that will recognize text as a nominal variable. So normally, if you have a multinomial variable like this one, like province, we would have had to reclassify each and every one of these levels as a different number. We'd have to recode them. Now, in general, it's good practice to recode them anyway, just because it makes it easier to read in our analysis sometimes, and it's good practice for other software that you may use in your careers. In any case, the other data types correspond to other forms of variables as well. Recalling from our class, decimal, something with decimals, is going to be something more continuous. Integer is something that is basically a whole number, and that could be a continuous variable, or it could be an ordinal variable. Now, we have seen here, this is an example of one categorical variable where we have recoded the values, the levels that we just talked about. Now, we have taken male and female, and we've recoded them as basically 1 and 0. This is more common practice in analysis. When you have a multinomial variable that's usually with very few levels, we usually recode that. Makes it cleaner, makes it easier to analyze, and so on. Now, here you've noticed that female equals 1. That basically means that level 1 here, that indicates someone who is female, and 0 is someone who is male, not female, basically. And correspondingly, you see our variable type or measure type is nominal. And we see our data type is integer because it's a whole number, even if we've coded. Now, if you want to do some descriptive statistics that we've just looked at in our previous class, just click under Exploration and click Descriptives. And there you can fill in whichever variables you want here under these two bubbles to have a look at those descriptive statistics for them. You will notice that there is a category for variables and one for split by. Split by basically means if you want to look at how all the other variables that you select are split by a given variable. So for instance, if we wanted to look at age, what is the descriptive variables for age? If we want to look at the descriptive variables for age, the descriptive statistics, for age by gender, we could then insert gender here in split by. And it'll basically tell us all the descriptive statistics by gender. Now, I've heard this question before. Where are the women and where are the men? Now, remember, we've recoded the variables, all right? So 1, in this case here, means woman. 0 means men. So we'll notice that there is a mean here, right? A mean being the average. That means that there are 2 rows, one for each level of the gender variable. In other words, 1 row for men, which is here, and 1 row for woman, which is here, indicated by 1. So this tells us basically that the mean age among men in our sample is 53.2 years old. And this here tells us that the mean age for women in the sample is 52.2 years old. If you want to get a more detailed breakdown, you can click frequency tables to basically tell you what the frequency is if you had, let's say, another type of variable. The reason why it's not showing very much is because right now we're working with continuous variables here. But you'll notice if we click something else, let's say highest education, it'll give us, first of all, that split by value. We're looking at values of education by men and women, right? So mean level of education among men here is 5.65 units. If you want to know what each unit means, go back to the legend that we've recoded them under in our Excel file. Here it shows us that the mean educational attainment for women is 5.03 units. Again, go back to the legend to find out what these mean. Now, the frequency table, we'll notice, is basically for non-continuous variables here. So it will tell us the split of men and women within each category, each level of education, basically, across 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 units. So it means that the people, let's say number 1 means someone with no education or primary education. Well, that would basically tell us that there are 195 men within our sample who have this level of education. And likewise, there are 663 women who have this level of education within our sample. If you click under statistics here, you'll notice there are a lot more finicky, more very nuanced types of indicators that you might want to look at for descriptive statistics. But realistically, everything that we've selected here is pretty standard. Everything that we've selected here is pretty much what people would usually want to have a look at. The other stuff about mode and sum and skew and kurtosis, these are not that important, in part because they don't tell us that much about our specific variables here. And if you want to play around, feel free to basically click and add any of these variables in here, and you can get a similar view, a similar sense of what we've done here. And we'll talk a bit about this in future in the future. But if you want to add any other type of analysis that is not available within your icons here, within the modules here with Jamovi, you can basically search for what other types of analyses are possible by clicking on the modules tab here. And if you click that, you can click Jamovi library here. And this is basically a library of all the different modules, all the different types of analyses that people have created just for Jamovi that you can search and then you can download and add to your version of Jamovi. That concludes this brief video that gives an overview, I hope, of how to run descriptive statistics and basically a few very general basic levels of inference about how to look at variables and manipulate them within Jamovi. Thank you for listening.